What's up, guys, and welcome to day one of the Croatian Team Championship. And today is the first day, and I'm already playing against my good friend and former roommate from the Olympiad as well. If you followed that event, Dominik Horvath, who is also one of the top players of Austria. So it's always funny if you travel like so far, and then you anyway play someone from your country anyway. But this is how life is in the chess world. You cannot choose your opponents mostly. And yeah, I just finished my preparations. I have the white pieces today, so I'll just try to stay solid, and yeah, we'll see how it goes. I'll go to lunch now, and yeah, game starts at 3 p.m. I'm already looking forward to how everything is organized there with the playing hall and so on. I heard that the conditions should be really good. So yeah, I'll see you guys later. I'm already back from the game, guys. Only like 45 minutes have passed. The game was pretty quick. We both knew the theory until the end. It was like a pretty well-known line, which I will show you later in the recap. But yeah, we even analyzed the line together some time ago. So this is like the kind of the problem when you're playing against a friend and also someone you're working on seriously with on chess, which is the case with Dominik and me. So it's not easy to get a game, especially like even if you have the white pieces like me today. But yeah, that's just how it is. If both players play perfectly like in this game, I would even say, then there's simply nothing to get out of. And yeah, a draw is also a fine way to start into the tournament, I think. Since also Dominik is a very strong opponent as well. The tournament is still long, and actually I felt pretty tired during the game as well. I think the traveling yesterday kind of stuck with me a bit. Hopefully it will be better tomorrow. Just this sitting for like 12 hours in the bus and then in the car, it kind of yeah, it was really exhausting. So yeah, I'm just trying to recover from that still. I will do so hopefully by going to the gym now, where I'm also trying to document my workout, film a bit there. So I will see you in the gym now. I also recorded a bit outside of the hotel, so this is the view. As you can see, it's incredible. Unfortunately, the weather is not that nice yet, but hopefully that will improve in the future. About the gym, I didn't record that much. I started with the Stairmaster, and also there the view is actually incredible from the cardio section. Then I did a lot of legs. I did some squats. Light at first, and then I went a bit heavier. This is the heaviest I went with. I think it was, including the bar, like 60 kilos, I think, something like this. And a lot of machines as well, a lot of things with dumbbells. So I did many things today. I really enjoyed going to the gym, getting back to the gym today as well. And of course, I also did some pull-ups, as I said before. My back really hurt it after the 13 hours in the bus, so that was nice too. I spent, I think, like 1.5 hours in total in the gym, so I'm really happy to get back to, and also the gym is great here at the hotel. As I'm back from the gym, I didn't record that much today because I just wanted to like have a fully focused workout, and there were also many people there, so I didn't want to bother them. But it was a really good workout. I worked on my legs today, a bit of back as well, because especially from all the sitting yesterday during the travels, my back really felt horrible. So I feel really energized now after the workout. It was really good, and I'm just having like one of my favorite, I don't know if you can see it, one of my favorite snacks in general, salted and roasted cashew nuts. Can highly recommend them if you haven't tried them yet. So that's my go-to post-workout snack, I would say. And yeah, I will record the recap now, and I will see you then. And welcome to the recap of the first game of the Croatian Team Championship. And as I've said, I think multiple times in this video already, I played against my good friend and Austrian teammate Dominik Horvath, who is also a Grandmaster and a very strong player, of course. Currently, we have around the same rating. I'm on 2533 now, and he is, I believe, on 2542. But his peak rating was very high, like 2575, only pretty recently, where he had an extremely good run. In the Olympiad, he didn't play that well, unfortunately, for him and for us. But yeah, he's an opponent I always really respect, and I know, of course, pretty well personally as well. So it's always interesting to play someone who you know pretty well. And yeah, this game I think was This can happen pretty often, as we will see, if you play against someone who you know very well and who you're working also with together on openings. Then something can just come which you've checked sometime in the past. So I had the white pieces, and in this tournament, or in this game at least, I went for e4, and he played e5, which I kind of expected, since more recently he went for the Petrov very often with knight f6. Oh, by the way, what I didn't mention was yet that, because usually I analyze my games on Lead Chess, but the tournament is at least not yet on Lead Chess there. So there is one website where the games are live. I will put it in the description for you if you're interested. But yeah, maybe in the upcoming rounds it will be on Lead Chess as well. But for now, I'm using ChessBase to analyze the games. But yeah, he went for Petrov in quite a few games recently. But now he played knight c6, and after the Spanish, which I usually go for, he went for the very classical approach, and he wanted to go for the Marshall defense, which I've also prepared for, since it is also one of the lines he plays very regularly, and it's like one of his main things. So knight f6, short castle. Now he played bishop e7. Knight takes e4 was also something I had to check. The open Spanish, since he also had some games here. But he went for bishop e7, rook e1, b5. Just to point out, always when white protects the pawn e4, then black has to push b5. For example, if d3, he has to go b5 or d6. It's just about protecting the pawn e5. Because if black would castle now, it would be a big mistake, since white can now take on e5 and is simply a pawn up. So therefore, black goes b5, bishop b3, and now short castle, and here we are in the so-called Marshall. If black doesn't want to go for the Marshall, I think the main other thing is just to go d6. When after c3, short castle, h3, we are in one of the main positions of the Ruy Lopez, when black has many different setups. Knight b8, the Briar, he can go bishop b7, the Zaitsev. Knight a5, this very old classical line, bishop c2, c5. So there are certain lines here, but I think now, at least on the higher level nowadays, the Marshall is more often on the board than the classical Ruy Lopez. And with a4, I went into the anti-Marshall, c3, and now d5. This will be the real Marshall now, after e takes d5, knight takes d5. It is a gambit for black, and here c6 is the main move. Bishop b7 is also one recent development, which I think is also totally okay for black. Black is just very well developed, and the missing pawn doesn't cause any big issues for him, because he will just have a lot of counterplay, especially with the very active bishop on b7. And yeah, often black can also gain space here with c5 and have immediate counterplay as well. But with c6, this is like the classical thing. There's a lot of theory here, but overall black is in very good shape here. So mostly people avoid the Marshall, therefore, trying to not force matters yet. And a4 is one of these ideas to not enter the Marshall. Some players also simply go d3, then followed by c3 to get more of a slow game. Again, not allowing black to go d5. h3 is also one idea, which has also been played more recently. But yeah, in this game, I wanted to go for a4. And Dominik played b4. Here there are, again, a few choices for black. Rook b8 is the one line which Magnus played in the World Championship match against Nepomniachtchi, which is also a very solid choice. The other line being bishop b7, where I think what was Magnus' argument, or his team's, is that after bishop b7, now white often goes d3, and the bishop on b7 can sometimes be a bit misplaced. Even in some lines, the bishop can later on, after d6, after knight a5, c5, the bishop often goes back to c8 and then to e6, if I recall correctly. So this was like the idea of rook b8, not to place the bishop on b7. But of course, there are some other downsides with this move as well. But Dominik went b4, which is kind of like the established main move, and now went for d4. Again, white has some other setups as well, a5 being one of them, and after d6, d3. Again, a more slower game. White will go something like h3, possibly bring the knight around as usual to g3. And yeah, it's also one big position. In general, I don't really like this position so much because the pawn on a5 is like a long-term weakness. It is also like that the pawn on a6 can sometimes be a weakness. And yeah, but this is like a kind of a big unbalance actually in the position. And I'm not often that comfortable here with white. So I went for the more forcing d4, and here he went d6. Here, knight takes d4 or both e takes d4 wouldn't be as good, because now white can take. Even bishop takes f7 is now an option, but I think knight takes d4 is the better move, is the simpler move. E takes d4, e5, knight e8, and now queen takes d4 when white has a very nice advantage. Just to show the comparison, if white would go d4 right away, because you could think you could do it right away as well. Now black could also go d6 like in the game, but here knight takes d4 is kind of the move which is the established equalizer, and after knight takes d4, the same line like before. We have the same position just without the inclusion of a4 and b4, which is very beneficial for black, because after d6, for example, black often has the idea to go c5, followed by c4, trapping the bishop on b3. And also the pawn on b4 is simply not a weakness here. So black should not take on d4 here. Instead, d6 was played, and it's also the main move. Now d takes e5, knight takes e5 was played, d takes e5 being one of the other big moves. These lines, I think, from an objective standpoint, are very, very similar, I would say. But Dominik played knight takes e5, I took, and now queen e2. Just to briefly mention, this game, at least from my part, and I think also from my opponents, we both knew everything until the end, basically, because I prepared for the Marshall, and apparently so did he. And yeah, this is like one of the big lines, and yeah, this just happens. Yeah, if both players know the line that well, then there's just nothing to get out of here, get out of the opening. But yeah, we will see how it went. So queen e2 I played, and in general in this position, I think that black has to do something more or less fast, because if white manages to stabilize everything, then black is in some strategic problems here, because if the knight, for example, jumps to c4, the pawn on b4 is can become a bit weak. Sorry. And yeah, also just white's pieces have very nice squares now, with the pawn already being on b4. The knight on c4 will be untouchable, bishop on b3 is very active. So black has to do something pretty fast, I would say, here. So Dominik went bishop c5. Now black already has some sort of threats with knight g4. This could be quite dangerous sometimes. So bishop e3 I played. And here we went for bishop d4. Again, this is still more or less well-known theory. Just to point out, knight takes e4 would be a big blunder, because now queen c4 is strong. And yeah, if black takes, now queen takes e4 when white is winning a piece, because the bishop on e3 and the rook on a8 are both hanging. He played bishop d4, which is very accurate. Bishop takes e3 also looks logical, which is also fine if black follows up accurately with knight g4. There are some correspondence games here I checked. Queen e2, queen h4, h3, knight f6, knight d2, and now knight h5 seems to be the right plan for black. Again, as I've mentioned before, black has to do something more or less fast and go for some active counterplay with knight f4 right away. But bishop d4 is like the more well-known way for black, and maybe also the cleaner way. Bishop takes d4, queen takes d4, and now rook d1. And now again, black has to find another move, which might not be that obvious, which is bishop g4, which Dominik also played. Just to point out, queen takes b2 is simply plundering the queen, because after rook a2, the queen is trapped on b2. Queen c5 is also more or less playable here, but now if white goes h3, just stopping bishop g4, and again, like I said before, knight d2 or knight c4 or knight f3, and again, I think black is under some pressure here. So bishop g4, the forcing way, rook takes d4, I have to go because I cannot go f3 because of the pin here. So rook takes d4, bishop takes e2, and now I went for, after a bit of a think, I went for rook takes b4, also knowing that rook d2 is one approach to try and play for an advantage, but I was also pretty sure that my opponent knew what to do here. Just to briefly show you, there was one game which I recalled, Caruana against Matlakov, rook fd8, and white always has these issues with the back rank, so I cannot take on the e2 because of rook d1, followed by checkmate. And f3 was the game between Fabi and Matlakov, take on d2, knight d2, rook d8, knight c4. And here black has to be a bit accurate, rook c1 with the idea of c3, now king f8, bringing the king, c3, and now b3. If b takes e3, rook takes e3, white has some advantage because black's pawns are a bit weak, and in general the bishop and the rook are a better pair than the knight and the rook. So b3, this was the game, rook b1. Now with the idea of bishop takes b3, because bishop b3 right away, there would come rook b8, followed by rook takes b2. Rook b1, rook b8, rook a1 now, with the idea of rook a3. But yeah, rook d8 was played in the game. I think that also knight d7 is possible here, just preparing knight c5 and protecting the pawn on b3. I think there was something like rook d1 here, when now knight c5, there's maybe rook d5. There was something here. Maybe bishop b5 just, and then rook d5. But I saw some repetition like this, knight f6 and then rook a1 back. So this, I guess, is also one way to draw. But rook d8, this was the game between Fabian Matlakov, rook a3, and here after some accurate moves, now knight b6. I think the last accurate move, black will take on a4, and the game also ended in a draw pretty soon here. So I tried rook takes b4. Now a5. Again, black has to find many forcing moves here, otherwise I would be simply a pawn up. a5 is logical because black is forcing me to go to b7, and then the pawn on e4 is hanging. Rook b7, rook c8. And yeah, now the pawn on e4 is hanging, and also black has this threat of going bishop a6, which would trap the rook on b7. So for example, knight c3, now bishop a6. Actually, I checked this also before the game. Now rook b5 was some idea which I briefly thought about, but it's quite risky after bishop b5, a b5. I thought if I get bishop d5 here, white has some pretty nice compensation, but there is c6, and after takes. I think there were some other lines with f4 now. I think this was how it went, but it didn't seem like black is risking anything, and if someone's risking anything here, it's probably me. So I went for the established way here with bishop a2, knight takes e3, knight takes e4. Bishop a2, it looks strange, yeah, but I'm simply making space for the rook to come back to b3 and then to e3 sometimes. So bishop a6 would be very inaccurate now because rook b3, and knight takes e4, rook e3. I'm probably winning the pawn on e5 as well, and there black would be under some pressure. So I went for knight takes e4, now rook b3 back, and again bishop c4 he has to play, because otherwise I'm going rook e3, and then I'm picking up something along the e file. So bishop c4, rook e3, bishop takes a2, and I went for rook takes e4, being already certain that the game would end in a draw pretty soon if he again finds some more accurate moves. Rook takes a2 is another idea, but now black has the important rook d8. When again I have some issues along the first rank, I probably have to go for something like rook e1 back, and yeah, black is not under. Black doesn't have any issues here as well. So rook takes e4, black has to take on b1, rook b1, and now f6, rook d1. And here I think is like the last step for black to be accurate, which is rook a b8, provoking b3, which I thought is not that obvious, because there was one game before, which I saw during my preparation, between Dubov and Sasikiran from 2015. And Dubov actually won this position with white, which I was very shocked to see, especially against someone as strong as Sasikiran. And the game went rook d8, rook takes d8, rook takes d8, king f1. And as we will see, we have the same position as appeared in my game, just without b3. And the point is actually pretty nice, because now after c5, this was the Dubov game, rook c4, rook d5. Now white has this plan of rook c3, followed by rook b3 and rook b5. And this position is actually not that easy for black. Sasikiran went into some trouble pretty quickly now, rook d4, rook takes c5. And even this position, it's level material, but white's rook is very active. And also the king is joining in to help the pawns pushing forward. So this is already very tough for black to hold, I think. Yeah, I was of course hoping for this, but Dominik played rook a b8, and now he's forcing b3, and now he went only for rook d8, and now we have the same position, but now in this position I don't have the plan of rook c3, rook b3, rook b5 anymore. So I think a very instructive sequence actually here. So here I went king e2, king f7, and now I just went for the simplification with c3, just going b4, and after cb, ab4. Here he offered a draw, which I accepted, because after rook takes b4, it's just a dead draw. Rook endgame with with level pawns, and yeah, there's not much I can play for here. If black at least doesn't blunder anything, basically you will maybe push some pawns here on the king side, has some counterplay there as well, and it's just a dead draw. So yeah, a very high quality game, which was like preparation from both of us until more or less the end, which yeah, cannot do anything about it. So yeah, but a decent start into the tournament, I think. A draw against Dominik is never bad. I also played against him in the Austrian Championship, by the way. If you didn't see that game, I made a recap of that as well, so you can check it out how that went. That game was way longer. There we played like 120 moves or so. When in the end, me with the black pieces, I almost clinched the win, but he defended really well in the end. So yeah, tomorrow I already know I will play against my coach's team, Borky Predojevic's team. So that will also be interesting to see what will happen there. And yeah, other than that, I hope you enjoyed today's recap. Let me know in the comments. And yeah, thank you for watching, and see you tomorrow.